Republican obstructionism in the House and Senate has made enacting even the most basic legislation an arduous process, which could be why so few bills are actually getting passed. I recently had a chance to talk with Representative Linda Sánchez about this, including Republicans' recent irrational opposition to ratifying the UN treaty extending rights to the disabled. Congresswoman, thank you as always for joining us. Fiscal Cliff negotiations continuing to dominate the news, and yet no real progress. Has the Republican Party learned anything? Has it moved forward with an offer that begins to make sense to you?
You know, it's interesting. I would have thought that the Republicans would have paid a little more attention to the election results, because I think the voters sent a clear message that they don't want to see this brinksmanship. They want our nation's business getting taken care of, and by being stubborn and holding middle-class tax cuts hostage, I don't think they've learned that lesson or heard that message.
That is what beguiles me. The president has done a very good negotiating job, focusing the issue just to the issue of whether or not the top 2% will get their tax relief, and everybody agrees the 98% should. Why don't the Republicans pass that bill and then push the issue to January and then hold the debt ceiling hostage and say, now we have a serious negotiation? That strikes me actually their best negotiating ploy.
Well, what's interesting is that under the president's proposal, you get 98% of what you want, and they're willing to walk away from that to get the 2% of what they want. And I don't understand the math of it. If you talk about everybody gets a tax cut up to $250,000. It's just the very wealthy don't get tax cuts above that $250,000. So they actually do get something out of this deal. Republicans don't want to see it happen.
Now, John Boehner is in an interesting position. The last 2 years, we watched him try carefully to dance. He had a Tea Party there that was holding his feet to the fire. In your estimation, you live with your colleagues in the House of Representatives. Has the Tea Party lost a bit of its oomph? The election results, a few of their leading voices lost elections, much to everybody's surprise. So can John Boehner look at them and say, hey guys, I'm now in command of the ship, not you?
I think he does have a greater position of strength, because he's seen some of the most vocal, hardline Tea Party members are not going to be returning members. So there's a little bit of wiggle room for him. But he's also got to be the guy that gets to yes. And there are Democratic votes that can be had if he's willing to compromise. The problem is he has steadfastly stuck to a majority of the majority must approve everything that comes to the floor. And when he can't get a majority out of his own party, he needs to look to Democrats for those votes.
Well, you're raising a fascinating point. Just flesh this out so folks can understand. What you're saying is if he really went to the middle, he would certainly be unable to get some Democratic votes, but he could get some Democratic votes and some Republican votes, losing the fringe on either side. Does that happen in today's House of Representatives, or do you have to pass bills with near unity among either party?
I think it can happen. It has happened back when Bush was in the White House and the Democrats were in control of the Congress. We sent over 460 bills to the president for signature. In this Congress, in which we have a Democrat in the White House and Republicans controlling the Congress, they've sent less than half of that to the president. They're not getting the nation's work done because they don't want to drop the fringe and go towards the middle where the bulk of the consensus is. Boehner needs to figure out he can get the nation's work done if he's willing to go to that center and not allow a fringe element of his own party to dictate what the agenda for the nation is going to be.
Well, that's why I'm waiting to see whether that fringe element, which is weakened right now, whether it gives John Boehner the latitude to go to the middle. Let's talk debt ceiling for a minute, which is really what was galvanizing, I think, the public's frustration last year when this reached ahead. Are we heading towards another crisis on raising the debt ceiling?
It depends on whether or not the Republicans are willing to sit down and try to fix this instead of kick the can down the road or play this brinksmanship where we come just shy of shutting everything down before they figure out a short-term solution. I mean, we really need to have serious talks about this. We need folks that want to see what is best for the country happen. And for a party that is always screaming about the business community that needs certainty, they have created the most uncertainty that I've ever seen in my 10 years on the Hill by playing this game of brinksmanship, of getting just to the point where really bad things will happen and then doing short-term extensions.
I always thought the uncertainty argument was overplayed as an economic argument. It was a fiction behind which people could hide to explain what was going on economically. But you are absolutely correct. If you're afraid of uncertainty, this is what is creating it. I think the president's proposal is certainly the right one. In fact, I think it has Republican roots. Pass a sweeping Debt ceiling extension, give the president the power to raise it, and then Congress can come in and veto if Congress wants to come in with a negative vote, but at least put the onus back on the Congress to do that, give the president the capacity to run the economy.
Right. The problem is the Republicans don't want to give the president anything.
Right.
They are willing to sink the captain in order, or sink the ship in order to drown the captain.
Right.
And you would have thought, again, that the last election cycle would have told them where the hearts and minds of the American public are with respect to standing with the president and trying to make sure that this nation's business gets taken care of.
You're on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I want to raise an issue that mystified people. The Senate's refusal to, or incapacity, because there are 38 opposition votes, to ratify a treaty that extended the Americans for Disabilities Act, essentially internationally. Senator Dole came to the floor in a wheelchair, asked his former colleagues to pass this. A lot of us were mystified. What do you make of this?
It's clear that there's a segment of the Senate that are isolationists, that don't want to do anything through the UN because somehow they think that that weakens our power here as a country. I think they've really cut off their nose to spite their face. They've really foregone an opportunity to have our standard ADA legislation set the standard globally for disabled people, many of them disabled veterans.
And one of the mystifying things here was every major veterans groups and the Chamber of Commerce supported this. Traditional Republican voices, one would have thought. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's an isolationist trend that is dominating some of the votes over there.
And it's, you know, people's personal ideology getting in the way of something that would have been a tremendous benefit globally.
Right. Congresswoman, as always, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's Viewpoint for tonight. Have a great evening. I'll see you here tomorrow.